All right, let's get started. Hello, y'all. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Lauren, and I'm joined today with Nick. He's from Endle Home Goods, but he's also a part of Big Cartel. He's a developer here at Big Cartel. So today we are going to be talking about branding and your Big Cartel shop. So thanks for taking your time out of your day to be here. We know everyone is super busy. We're going to make this hopefully around 20 minutes long. If you have to dodge out early, not to worry at all. We so appreciate you being here, but class will be recorded. So we'll email you a recording about 24 hours after we're done airing. So if you have friends that signed up that couldn't make it today, not to worry, they'll be getting a recording soon. Nick and I will be taking questions at the end, so just feel free to type them into the chat. We won't be able to address them while we're talking, but we'll scroll back through. At the end, we'll have a little bit of time for 2 or 3 questions that we see kind of repeated through the chat, and then we can go from there. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to talk about branding. First of all, what is it? Then we're going to turn over the time to talk with Nick a little bit and get his perspective and experience with branding his shop. And then, of course, answer any questions you may have. So I just first wanted to talk to you about what is branding. So branding is essentially the process involved in creating a unique name and image for your product, for who you are in your customer's mind. This is a way for you to kind of differentiate yourself from the crowd. This is how people, if they're looking for something, they want your certain something. So branding can include anything from, your logo, the way your shop's theme looks, how, you present your brand on social media, what kind of discount codes you're using even. Like one of my favorite shops, today I saw that they had a discount code that was called pumpkin spice. And talk about, branding for their customer base. Of course I love pumpkin spice, so I'm going to use that discount code. But branding kind of aims to establish you and differentiate yourself just from the crowd, which is so hard to do these days, but it can still be done. So you kind of want to start, the easiest way to start would be with your shop name. How is your shop name representative of you and what you're selling in your brand? Then you could, dovetail from that and have your custom domain just be your shop name or your shop brand instead of having that .bigcartel.com at the end. Then you could branch out more into creating a logo that looks just right for you. There really are so many ways that you can kind of get started. And we're actually going to talk with Nick a little bit more about how he did that process. First of all, though, I'd love to share with you Nick's shop. He is honestly so talented, and I wanted to just pop on over so you can see the current brand that he's using right now. He is an amazing woodworker, and he does everything from barware, scoops, cutting boards, and even bigger pieces. So he really is a jack of all trades, but this is kind of his baby that he's been building from the ground up. You can see his shop too. It's pretty neat. He has this all in his garage where he lives in Wisconsin. And please take time, if you will, to look in here and just to kind of see his own setup, especially if you're a woodworker or a carpenter yourself. He even has a little cheat sheet down here of all of the tools that he uses in his shop in case you're wanting to, start building your own shop from there. So I did want to just get things started with you all and talk with you essentially about, sorry about that. There we go. I wanted to talk with you essentially about with Nick and how he started his branding. So first of all, welcome, Nick. Thank you so much for being here. And I kind of wanted to turn it over to you now to talk a little bit about how you came up with your brand from the very beginning when it was just like an idea, and how you kind of, the next steps that you took there from the very beginning.
Yeah, so I started woodworking about 5 years ago, and it was just kind of a thing, based out of necessity. I needed some furniture for my apartment and kind of gathered some tools together. My dad and my grandpa were woodworkers, so kind of had a little background knowledge from them. But as I started making things, I had requests from other people to make, them little, I made a toy box for somebody, and then it kind of went from there into smaller gifts. And so it kind of evolved naturally into selling things to people around the holidays. And decided it was a perfect time to come up with a name for what I was doing. I kind of, love the idea of just having T-shirts made and product tags that have, yeah, there you go. So to start with, I just kind of came up with Nick's Woodshop, and pretty self-explanatory there. But as time went on, I ended up getting, my products being sold in some local stores here in town. And as time went on, I realized that Nick's Woodshop was a little too generic, and I felt weird just having my first name be part of the branding. So I decided that it was time for a change, and to make my branding become a little more mesh a little bit better with the kinds of stores that I was selling in. I was selling in a lot of like home goods and gift stores, and selling a lot of cutting boards, utensils, kitchen equipment, and things like that. So I rebranded from Nick's Woodshop to Endle Home Goods, and Endle is my last name, and it was kind of a thing. Really proud of like my family heritage, so kind of wanted to pay tribute to that as part of my branding, and being something that I kind of put out into the world. So
I love that. So it sounds like your brand kind of matured over time. So it just started out as kind of like Nick's Wood Shop, a fun kind of side hustle. But Endle Home Goods, even just the name, it sounds a lot more serious. Like, hey, Endle Home Goods, you can come to us for any of your homeware needs, right?
right, and I didn't want to limit myself to just being known as like a wood shop. I mean, people hear wood shop, and it kind of silos what I might be doing. So being called Home Goods, I kind of open it up to expand in the future. If I want to start making other things, get interested in other mediums, or if I end up, this becomes a bigger thing, then I can have, other people make products under the Endle Home Goods name, and maybe someday down the road open up a store where I have my own products and other people's too.
I love that. You're thinking big, you're thinking down the road. So, and I think that's really important too for other shops. Like if you're a jewelry maker, why not call yourself a silversmith? Like why box yourself in with just your name? And I think that that was a really wise choice. And so that kind of led to your rebrand. So it sounds like you were able to hone in on a name, and a name that really fit you and kind of your vision for where Endle Home Goods wanted to go. Let's talk a little bit about creation of your logo. Did you do that yourself? Did you hire a designer? Like, what was your process there? Because I know the logo, that's something that's shared across all platforms. You get to see someone's avatar on social media, and immediately you can see that and know whose brand that is. Or that's what's being shared when someone shares a link on Facebook, or even blog posts, or what you're putting on T-shirts. Like, these are things that one glance and people will know that this is your brand. So how did you come up with the logo? And if you could talk a little bit about that process, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, changing over to Endle Home Goods, it was more than just a logo. Like branding to me is much more than just like making sure that you have a good looking logo. I do a lot of in-person events. I have a lot of wholesale accounts. Obviously, I have the website, and thinking about social media and apparel and things like that. So I think it's important to consider, where the name will be displayed. If you're selling in stores, kind of thinking about color schemes and size of your product tags and what information is going to be on them. So when I had a graphic design duo called the Young Jerks, based out of New York. They came up with kind of this whole branding for me, and I worked with them. I kind of knew what I wanted, so we were able to work together and come up with a logo that worked really well on all sorts of things, business cards, product tags. I was able to create some stamps to put on little, hand stamp bags for my products. So it's a lot to consider in kind of knowing what you want your brand to look like and feel like ahead of time before you have a logo made is pretty important. So Um, yeah, and once I was able to go back and forth with the designers, kind of figuring out the style, what works for me, and what would work to match well with my products, and what I'd be proud to have. I mean, it's my last name as part of the business, so it was really important to me that it's represented well. In my town, in the state of Wisconsin, and all over the place.
Right. I love that you speak about all the different ways that a logo can represent you. And it is also really nice that you kind of got professionals to help out with that. It wasn't something that you just relied on for yourself. And I know that it can be tough to budget out money to hire a designer, but it sounds like this is paying off down the road. And designers oftentimes think of things really globally when it comes to your logo. Like, is
Mm-hmm.
this contrast going to look good in a teeny avatar all the way, blown up across, a banner if you're at a festival or a market? And I think it's nice that you had someone there to help walk that path with you. It also sounds like you weren't just handed a logo like, hey, sure, we designed something, here you go. You were integrative in that process of making something that was true to you, true to your brand, and something that you would be really proud of.
Absolutely, yeah. And before, leading up to the whole rebrand, I was very conscious of the home goods stores that I walk into with a lot of small and independent makers, and seeing kind of what they're doing, seeing, kind of collecting ideas, what might work for me and what might not work for me. So I had all that in my head going into the rebrand process to make sure that what I ended up with was really a cohesive thing. I spent a lot of time for the first few years of Nick's Woodshop. I was printing out product tags, the night before, doing a big craft show and cutting them up, and having to assemble everything. And now with a more cohesive thing, with a more cohesive brand, I can have product tags printed ahead of time professionally, and it makes a big difference for customers seeing that when when they have hundreds of other products, browsing through the aisles at a store, or at an in-person event.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all very accustomed, if we do have side hustles, to burning that midnight oil, just trying to get stuff done before a deadline or before a big show or a market. So you're speaking to us there, but it's also nice to know that with that kind of planning and forethought, you're not having to spend as much, hours at 2 or 3 a.m. the night before.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit more about your rebrand. I noticed that you have your old custom domain actually redirecting to your new custom domain. So it was a really easy transition for customers that knew you as Nick Woodshop to just automatically be sent to your new URL. But can you talk a little bit more about other steps that you made to make that transition easier on your shoppers and your customers to not lose any of them, essentially, because they don't know who you are now with your new name?
Yeah, it was a hard choice. I had most of the branding done for months ahead of time before it was finally time to switch everything over. Just making sure that I had all of the image assets ready for the different product tags and different signs that I was going to be making. Um, and then once I made sure that all of that was in order, 100% before I was ready to announce to people. And I kind of waited. My busy time is during the holidays, so towards the end of the year, really anytime from September, October through Christmas. So I waited until after the holiday rush was over, and it was kind of a nice opportunity that most of the stock in the stores that I sell at had kind of depleted a little bit. So I wouldn't have to worry about overlapping, brand names with the same products. And then the hardest part, I think, was knowing when to kind of pull the trigger on it. And there's one day when I just said, well, I think I'm ready, and made, announcements on all my social media pages, sent emails to people, and had a really positive response to it. So, as far as the technical side of things, yeah, I use Google Apps for all of my email and my domain registration. And their platform makes it really easy to set up redirects. So anybody that's going to the old Nick's Woodshop pages can automatically get sent to my new domain. And I'd say rebranding, with a substantial audience, it's kind of like moving to a new address. You need to set up with the post office. In case anybody tries to send you mail at the old one, you need to make sure that they get redirected to the new one. Even for some time, I've had the new branding in effect since January of this year, and I still occasionally will get emails from people who just haven't heard. They might not have been checking social media or seen any announcements, but people who are getting in touch with me after a couple of years, and they send emails to the old Nick's Woodshop address, which then get forwarded to me. So, yeah, making sure that all of that's set up, ready to go for a rebrand is really important.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like you put a lot of thought into this, and there's still a safety net for your customers that haven't quite caught on that you changed.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like it's not insurmountable. Like if you maybe started down one path and this brand just isn't really true to who you are and who your products are trying to represent and who you're trying to sell to, it's all right to switch lanes and change direction. You just have to do it with a little more planning.
Yeah, and there's so many resources out there. From big companies, you see it all the time. They might not necessarily change their name, but they'll change logos. And when their logo is the thing that's recognizable and they change it, I'm sure the big corporate places have lots of hesitation too. But it's something that can be done for sure.
Absolutely. We're not turning a cruise liner. This is more like turning a motorboat, right?
Yeah.
We can be a little more agile with our smaller businesses.
Right.
All right. So I wanted to quick pivot. I've been looking in the chat, and there's a lot of questions about promotion and cross promotion and how to get your work out there. And I wanted to ask if you had any insight on things like paid advertisement, endorsement, cross promotion. How do you get local businesses to want your stuff and stock your products? Or if you feel like buying web ads is worth the money for you. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Sure. I used to spend a little bit of money around the holidays on promoting my products on Facebook and Instagram, and it yielded okay results, but that wasn't as it didn't pay off as much as I would have liked to see it. So a big part of my business is local and interacting with the community and other local business owners. So a lot of it is just kind of paying attention, being very aware of what local stores are posting on their accounts, and making sure that I engage with them, and promoting them when they're posting stuff that I'm interested in, and kind of in turn, I think that kind of helps. We build each other up through these kinds of things, and eventually, if I'm sharing something from a local store, even if I'm not, in any kind of business relationship with them, they'll catch wind of that and they can start being interested in my work. And eventually it can lead to working together. It can be as simple as just reaching out and saying, like a local coffee maker. I make a lot of coffee scoops. And so I've reached out to numerous coffee companies just to see if they're interested in having a product that will pair with some of their coffee, and maybe if they want to do a giveaway or if they want to offer like a bundled product. It's not too scary to just send a quick message and see if somebody's interested in working together. It's really helped me out a lot when building relationships with those people.
Totally. And the worst thing they can say is no, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And all you're out is like the time it took to write the email and reach out. But just one no doesn't mean someone else will say no. So it's really interesting to me to hear that even in this day and age where we are all just so beholden to our devices and our computers and our social media accounts, that what's really working for you is, reaching out and creating your own networks personally and creating those collaborations. Which I love, because that's like the cheapest way, right?
Yeah.
It costs the least amount of money to network, to build other businesses up that you think are cool, and hopefully they can help support you as well. So I think that's really what it's all about when it comes down to like being true to yourself. That's kind of a part of your brand too, right? Like instead of buying web ads, your brand is someone who is, you can shake your hand and find you at the local coffee shop in a cool wood scoop tied to a pound of coffee. So I love that. See, branding, it's in everything. All right, so we wanted to keep this close to 20 minutes, but I wanted to kind of close things out before we took questions with what are your top 3 tips that you have when it comes to finding your business's voice or your brand?
Yeah, so I think the biggest one for me is being true to myself, being true to my own voice. I might not be the most socially outgoing person in public, but it might be a little socially awkward, and that might reflect on some of my social media posts sometimes, but that's okay. I'm running this operation by myself. I have help from a few people here and there, but it's me, and I'm representing my family name and all of the products that I make. So it's I don't worry so much about if I'm I don't worry about trying to find a voice. I just kind of be myself, and showcase a little bit of my own personality in my posts on Instagram. I kind of try and find a mix of, just product photos and process photos, but also show my dog every once in a while and make sure that I be myself. So another one is try not to focus too much on what other people are doing. It can be really easy to, when you're starting out, especially, to kind of, you have all those accounts that on Instagram that you admire that have, thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers, and you say, that's what I want to do. But if you're paying too much attention to that, it can get really discouraging. And when you're trying to build your own brand, and there's always talk about algorithms and making sure that you're fitting in and finding the right method of posting and right time to post. But I say just go for it. I don't post at a specific time. Some of my Instagram posts get way less engagement than others, and that's okay. Post again the next day and see where it goes from there. I think that's fine. So and another thing is, I think pay attention to what family and friends and people within your circle, ask them for advice. Feel free to test, if you have new products or if you have new ideas for posts or branding, see what they think. I think that's, start from there if you're unsure of, what you're doing or the direction that you should be going in. I think, kind of having a close knit network when you're trying to build a brand and expand is something that's really valuable.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was some really valuable information, especially someone who's been walking this path for a while and seeing success as well. So I just wanted to kind of touch on the few things that we really thought were important, which is finding your voice, being authentic. You can sniff out someone faking it from a mile away and through a Instagram post, right? If you're fake, no one's going to want your stuff. So just be yourself, even if it is so different from the rest of everyone, because that's your truth, and that's what's going to get customers interested in your art, your brand, your stuff. And then finding your community, it sounds like, using people in your circles to help bounce ideas off of, to help get you through writer's block, to test out new designs, what have you. I think that having that support is really helpful in all of that, right?
Yeah, and that's where the word of mouth starts from too. So
right. And word of mouth is so important. It's still one of the best and most trusted ways to get customers, is if someone actually tells you about something that they love.
Yeah.
Okay, we're a little bit over, but we did it. So thanks y'all for hanging in there with us.